The aroma of roasted chicken filled the kitchen, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing in Elizabeth's heart. She stirred the pot absent-mindedly, her mind a storm of thoughts. Outside, the sun cast a warm glow, but inside, the air felt heavy. The news had broken like a thunderclap: Michael's betrayal. Infidelity, a word that cut deeper than any knife. She could hear the whispers, the muffled conversations between Sarah and David, wondering what had happened to their family. The laughter that usually echoed off the walls was replaced by an unbearable silence. As she set the table, Elizabeth's hands trembled. The plates clinked together, each sound echoing the fears that had taken root in her chest. She glanced at the newspaper lying on the counter, its headline screaming the truth she was desperately trying to deny. The betrayal felt like a ghost haunting their once happy home. The very foundation of their family was crumbling, and she was powerless to stop it. "Is dinner almost ready?" Sarah's voice, tinged with an edge of irritation, broke through Elizabeth's thoughts. The 15-year-old stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression a mix of teenage defiance and confusion. Elizabeth forced a smile, but her heart sank further. How could she reassure her daughter when her own world was shattering? "Just a few more minutes, sweetheart. Why don't you help your brother set the table?" Elizabeth suggested, her voice steady but lacking the warmth it usually held. Sarah rolled her eyes, the frustration palpable. She complied, but the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. David, oblivious to the storm around him, bounded into the kitchen, a bright smile on his face. "Can we have dessert first?" he asked, the innocence of a 10-year-old shining through. Elizabeth's heart ached at the sight. How could she protect him from this? How could she shield them both from the broken pieces of their parents' marriage? "Maybe after dinner, David," she said, her voice wavering. He nodded, but she could see the flicker of worry in his eyes. Children are perceptive, even when they don't understand the full weight of what's happening. They could feel the shift in the air, the love that once enveloped them now feeling like a distant memory. As the family sat down to dinner, the atmosphere was strained. Michael entered, his face a mask of regret, but Elizabeth couldn't look at him. She focused on the food, the steam rising from the dishes, as if it could somehow lift the burden off her shoulders. "How was school today?" Michael attempted to break the silence, his voice tentative. "Fine," Sarah replied curtly, her eyes fixed on her plate. David, sensing the tension, shifted in his seat, looking between his parents. Elizabeth could see the confusion written on his face, the way he struggled to comprehend the shadows that loomed over them. "Elizabeth, can we talk later?" Michael's voice was low, almost pleading. She wanted to scream, to tell him there was nothing left to say. Instead, she nodded stiffly, her heart a heavy stone in her chest. How could she find the words to express the betrayal she felt? The trust that had been shattered like glass? Dinner continued in silence, punctuated only by the sound of cutlery scraping against plates. Elizabeth felt the weight of each bite she took, each one feeling like a betrayal in itself. She glanced at Michael, his brow furrowed, the guilt evident in his eyes. How had they come to this? A once happy family now felt like strangers sharing a meal. After dinner, she found herself in the living room, the walls closing in. She picked up her phone, scrolling through the news articles that had invaded her life. With each headline, each comment, the pain deepened. Elizabeth felt exposed, laid bare for the world to see, the wife of a man who had broken vows, shattered trust, and left a family on the brink of collapse. Sarah came in, her face flushed with anger. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you protect us, Mum?" The words cut through Elizabeth like a knife. She had wanted to shield them, to keep them safe from the storm, but instead, she felt like she was drowning. "Sarah, Elizabeth began, but her voice faltered. She couldn't find the words to explain the mess of emotions swirling inside her. All she could manage was a choked, "I'm so sorry." "Sorry isn't enough," Sarah shouted, her voice echoing in the quiet room. David peeked around the corner, his eyes wide with confusion. "What's happening?" he asked, his innocence a stark contrast to the turmoil enveloping them. "Nothing, love, just a disagreement," Elizabeth said, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a reassurance, but Sarah wasn't done. "Dad's the one who should be sorry. He's the one who hurt us." Her voice cracked, and Elizabeth could see the tears pooling in her eyes. The dam of emotions was breaking, and Elizabeth felt the fear rush in, fear of losing her daughter, fear of losing everything. In that moment, Elizabeth realized they were all caught in this whirlpool together, each one struggling to stay afloat. She had to find a way to mend the broken pieces, to weave their family back together amidst the wreckage. But where would she find the strength? How could she pull through when the ground felt so unsteady beneath her feet? The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, but she knew she had to try. For her children, for herself. The family they had built, the faith they shared, it was worth fighting for. But could she find the courage to face the truth? Could she confront the hurt and start the healing? As Elizabeth looked into Sarah's eyes, filled with pain and anger, she knew the battle was just beginning. The question was, could they all pull through together? The next morning came too soon, the sunlight creeping through the curtains, illuminating the remnants of yesterday's chaos. Elizabeth sat at the kitchen table, a mug of tea steaming in front of her, but all she could taste was bitterness. The world outside was moving on, yet her heart felt like it was stuck in a dark, endless night. Sarah stormed in, her hair hastily pulled into a bun, her expression still raw from the night before. "I can't believe you let him stay," she said, her voice taut as a bowstring. "How can you even look at him?" Elizabeth took a deep breath, steadying herself against the onslaught. "I know it's hard, love. Believe me. I'm struggling too," she replied, her words slow and deliberate. "Struggling? He broke our family." Sarah's hands balled into fists at her sides. "He doesn't deserve to be here." With every word, Elizabeth felt the weight of her daughter's pain pressing down on her. "I understand how you feel, but we need to talk about this as a family. We can't just bury it." "Talk? What's there to talk about?" Sarah shot back, her voice cracking. "He destroyed everything. What's left to save?" Elizabeth's heart twisted. She wanted to scream, to let her daughter know that she felt the same agony, but words were failing her. "We need to find a way to heal, Sarah. We can't let this consume us. We have to try." Just then, David wandered in, his small frame still clad in pajamas. "What's wrong?" he asked, his innocent blue eyes darting between his mother and sister. Elizabeth knelt down, pulling him into a gentle hug, hoping to shield him from the storm brewing in their home. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just a bit of a disagreement," she said, forcing a smile. Yet inside, she felt a tempest raging. "Can we have pancakes?" David asked, his voice brightening the heavy atmosphere. "Sure, I'll make some," Elizabeth replied, grateful for the distraction. As she flipped pancakes on the griddle, the scent of vanilla filled the air, a fleeting reminder of simpler mornings. But as she served the food, the tension remained. They sat around the table, the clinking of forks and the sound of chewing amplified in the heavy silence. Elizabeth caught Sarah's glare directed at Michael, who was attempting to hold his composure, guilt etched across his features. "Listen, I know I messed up," Michael said finally, breaking the silence with a hesitant voice. "But I want to make things right." "Make things right?" Sarah scoffed, pushing her plate away. "You can't just say that and expect it to magically fix everything. You hurt us." "I know," Michael replied, his voice thick with regret. "I can't take back what I did, but I'm here. I want to work on this, for all of us." Elizabeth felt the air shift slightly, the tension still palpable but now laced with a hint of hope. "Maybe we can try talking about what we all need," she suggested, her heart pounding. "We can't ignore the hurt, but we can try to mend it." "Why should I even bother?" Sarah's voice was bitter, but Elizabeth could see her resolve beginning to crack. "Because we're family," Elizabeth said, her voice firm yet tender. "Families fight, they struggle, but they also fight to stay together. We can't let this tear us apart." David, ever the innocent, piped up. "I don't want us to be sad. I want us to be happy." His small voice cut through the tension, a reminder that they were still a family, even if the pieces felt broken. "Me too, buddy," Michael said, his eyes softening as he looked at his son. "I'm so sorry for everything. I want to be the dad you deserve." Elizabeth observed the exchange, her heart swelling with conflicting emotions. Could they really find a way back to each other? Could they rebuild what was lost? As the days passed, the atmosphere in the house shifted. It was subtle, like the first hint of spring after a long winter. Elizabeth noticed Sarah's anger slowly, giving way to a guarded curiosity. She'd catch her daughter glancing at Michael when he wasn't looking, weighing the possibility of forgiveness. One evening, Elizabeth found herself in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of a game night. Sarah and David were engrossed in a board game, laughter spilling from their lips as they rolled dice and moved pieces. Elizabeth felt a flicker of warmth in her chest. "Can I join?" she asked, her heart racing. "Sure, Mum," David cheered, his eyes lighting up. "You can be on my team." Elizabeth settled in beside him, a smile stretching across her face as they played. Laughter filled the room, and for the first time in a long while, Elizabeth could almost believe that everything would be all right. Later, as the children settled into their beds, Elizabeth found herself face to face with Michael in the hallway. The air was thick with unspoken words. "We need to talk," she said softly, her voice steady. "Yeah, I know. I want to fix this, Elizabeth," he replied, his eyes searching hers. "But I don't know where to start." "Let's start by being honest," she said, her heart pounding. "We can't move forward without addressing the hurt." Michael nodded, his expression serious. "I'll do whatever it takes. I love you and the kids more than anything." Elizabeth felt a flicker of hope within her, but also the weight of uncertainty. "It's going to take time," she warned, "but it's worth fighting for." "I'm ready," he said, his voice firm. As Elizabeth retreated to her room, she felt the heaviness of the day start to lift. There was still much to navigate, much to heal, but the first steps had been taken. They were still a family, and together, with faith and determination, they could find their way back to each other. In that quiet moment, she realized that the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. Yet, within that struggle, there lay the seeds of redemption, forgiveness, and the strength to heal. The sun hadn't set on their family, it was merely the dawn of a new beginning. The next morning dawned brightly, but the warmth of the sun felt distant. Elizabeth stood at the kitchen sink, staring out at the garden, where the first tendrils of spring were beginning to stretch toward the light. The beauty outside contrasted sharply with the turmoil inside. She could hear Sarah upstairs, her door slamming shut, a sound that echoed through the house like a thunderclap. "David, honey, can you help me with breakfast?" Elizabeth called out, trying to mask the tension creeping into her voice. "Okay, Mum," he replied cheerfully, bounding into the kitchen. His bright smile was like a beacon in the gloom. "Can I make toast?" "Of course, sweetheart. Just be careful with the butter," she said, watching him scamper to the pantry. His innocence reminded her of the light they had all once shared, before the shadows crept in. As she prepared eggs, the door creaked open. Sarah emerged, her face a mask of frustration. "I can't believe you want him here again," she said, her tone sharp. "How can you trust him after everything?" Elizabeth turned, placing the spatula down. "Sarah, please, let's talk about this. I know you're hurting." "Hurting? You don't understand." Sarah's voice rose, and Elizabeth felt the familiar ache of heartbreak. "He's not the person he pretended to be. How can you still love him?" Elizabeth felt a lump in her throat. "It's not about love or trust right now. It's about healing. We're all wounded, including him. This isn't easy for any of us." "Easy? You think this is easy?" Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. "You just want to play happy families again. Sarah, we can't ignore what's happened. We have to face it together." Elizabeth's voice softened, her heart aching for her daughter. "You know that I'm doing my best." David, oblivious to the tension, chimed in. "I think we should all just hug it out." He stretched his arms wide, an innocent gesture that struck Elizabeth's heart like an arrow. "See? Even David knows we can fix this," she said gently, but Sarah wasn't convinced. "David doesn't have to live with the consequences." "We do," she shot back, her gaze flicking to her brother, who was now focused on the toast. "He doesn't know what it's like to have your family torn apart." Elizabeth felt the weight of Sarah's words. "I know, and it breaks my heart, but what I do know is that holding on to this anger will only hurt us more. We need to find a way forward." "Forward?" Sarah scoffed, arms crossed defiantly. "You mean pretend everything's fine while he walks around like he didn't destroy our lives?" Elizabeth reached out, touching Sarah's shoulder gently. "I'm not asking you to forget, just to consider the possibility of healing. It won't happen overnight, but we can only start if we're willing to be open." The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Elizabeth could see the flicker of doubt in Sarah's eyes. "I just don't want to be hurt again," she admitted quietly. "Neither do I," Elizabeth replied, her heart aching for her daughter. But we can't let fear dictate our lives. We have to fight for what matters, and that's us. With that, the door swung open again, and Michael stepped in, a hesitant smile on his face. It faltered as he took in the atmosphere. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his voice steady but cautious. "Morning," Elizabeth replied, a sense of trepidation washing over her. She could sense the tension rising again. "Can I help with breakfast?" Michael offered, lifting a hand as if to bridge the divide. "No thanks, Dad," Sarah replied, her voice laced with an edge. "We've got it covered." Michael's expression faltered, but he nodded. "Okay, just let me know. I'm here to help in any way I can." Elizabeth watched him retreat, a pang of sympathy for the man who had caused so much pain. She knew he was trying, but the road to forgiveness was long and winding. "We all need to work together," she said softly, hoping to mend the broken threads between them. The day unfolded slowly, like a heavy curtain being drawn back. Elizabeth busied herself with chores, trying to create a sense of normalcy. But the silence between Sarah and Michael was palpable, an unspoken barrier that neither seemed ready to breach. Later that afternoon, as the sun dipped low, casting golden hues across the living room, Elizabeth decided that they needed a family meeting. Gathering everyone felt like trying to herd cats, but she was determined. "Can we sit down together for a moment?" she called out, her voice steady. The three of them gathered in the living room, the air thick with apprehension. David sat cross-legged on the floor, his eyes darting between his sister and father, sensing the tension but unsure of its gravity. "Listen, I know this is hard for all of us," Elizabeth began, her heart pounding. "But I think it's time we talk about what happened. We can't keep pretending everything is okay. We need to address our feelings, even the painful ones." "I don't want to talk about it," Sarah exclaimed, her eyes flashing. "I get that, but we can't avoid it forever," Elizabeth insisted, her voice firm. "We need to find a way to heal, and that starts with honesty. We can't fix what we don't acknowledge." Michael shifted uncomfortably, his gaze dropping to the carpet. "I know I've hurt you both in ways I can't take back. I'm sorry for everything. I'm here, and I want to make it right." "Sorry isn't enough," Sarah snapped, her voice rising again, the hurt spilling over like a tidal wave. "You can't just say that and expect us to believe you." "Then what will it take?" Michael asked, his voice strained. "I want to prove to you that I can change. I want to be a better husband, a better father." "You can't just say you'll do better and expect us to believe you," Sarah shot back, tears brimming in her eyes. "You need to show it." "I will," Michael promised, desperation creeping into his voice. "I'll work hard to earn your trust back. Just give me a chance." Elizabeth felt the tension crackle in the air, a mix of anger, fear, and a glimmer of hope. "Maybe we can start with small steps," she suggested. "We can set boundaries and expectations. It's not going to be easy, but we've got to try." "Try?" Sarah scoffed again, but Elizabeth could see the conflict in her eyes. "Yes, try," Elizabeth affirmed, her heart racing. "We owe it to ourselves and to each other. We can't let this define us." David, still sitting cross-legged, piped up, "I just want us to be happy again." His innocent words hung in the air, a reminder of what they were fighting for. "Me too, buddy," Michael said softly, his eyes glistening with emotion. "I want to do better for you." The silence stretched again, but this time it felt different. It was a silence filled with possibility, a moment where the cracks in their family could begin to heal. As the sun dipped lower, Elizabeth felt a flicker of hope ignite in her heart. They were still standing on shaky ground, but at least they were standing together. And together, they just might find their way back to each other. The next morning dawned with a tentative light. Elizabeth woke early, the house still wrapped in silence. She moved quietly through the kitchen, the familiar routine offering a sense of comfort amidst the chaos. She poured herself a cup of coffee, the steam curling up like a prayer. As the warmth hit her hands, she felt a flicker of determination. Today would be different. Today, they would confront their pain head-on. She glanced out the window, where the garden was beginning to bloom again. The flowers, despite the winter's harshness, were fighting their way back to life. So could they. Sarah drifted into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, still half dreaming. "Morning," she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. Elizabeth offered a soft smile, hoping to bridge the chasm that had opened between them. How about we make pancakes? She suggested, trying to inject some warmth into the cool morning air. Sure, Sarah replied, her tone neutral. As they began to mix the batter, Elizabeth seized the moment. I know things have been tough, and I want you to know I'm here for you. Do you really think we can fix this? Sarah asked, her voice steadying, curiosity breaking through her walls. We have to try, don't we? Just like those flowers. They didn't give up, Elizabeth replied, her heart racing with hope. As they flipped pancakes, the aroma began to fill the kitchen. David wandered in, drawn by the scent like a moth to a flame. Did someone say pancakes? He exclaimed, eyes wide with excitement. Yep, come on, help us out, Sarah said, her mood lifting for just a moment. Together, they set the table, laughter beginning to break through the tension like the morning sun piercing through clouds. Elizabeth felt her heart swell. These small moments of connection were vital. They were stepping stones leading to healing. Michael appeared, still in his pajamas, the remnants of a restless night etched on his face. Morning, everyone, he greeted, the weariness in his voice tangible. Breakfast is almost ready, Elizabeth said, trying to sound cheerful. Great, I'll grab the orange juice, Michael replied, but he hesitated at the doorway, sensing the unspoken barriers that remained. Sarah, can you pass me the syrup? Elizabeth asked, hoping to draw her daughter into the moment. Sarah complied, but her eyes flicked to Michael, wariness still lingering. As they sat down to eat, the atmosphere was fragile, like a spiderweb glistening with dew. David dove into his pancakes, oblivious to the tension, while Michael picked at his food, the silence growing heavier. Can we talk about yesterday? Michael finally broke the silence, his voice low and steady. Talk? Sarah echoed, her voice edged with disbelief. What's there to talk about? You've already said you're sorry. What's changed? Elizabeth felt her heart race. Sarah, let's give him a chance, she urged gently. I don't want to give him a chance, Sarah shot back, the defensiveness rising again. I don't want to play pretend. None of us are pretending, Michael interjected, his voice firm yet pained. I made a terrible mistake, but I'm here to show you I want to change. I want to make things right. Words are cheap, Dad, Sarah replied, crossing her arms, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. David looked between them, confusion written on his young face. Can't we just hug it out again? He asked innocently, trying to lighten the mood. David, Elizabeth said softly, sometimes it takes more than hugs, but hugs help, he insisted, his sincerity cutting through the tension. They do, Elizabeth agreed, her heart aching for her son. But we also need to talk. We need to feel what we feel, even if it hurts. Michael nodded, his gaze lingering on Sarah. I understand your anger. You have every right to feel that way. But I want to earn your trust back, even if it takes time. Time? Sarah scoffed, her skepticism evident. How much time? A week? A month? Will I wake up one day and just magically trust you again? No, Michael replied, his voice raw. You won't. Trust is built, brick by brick. I'm here to do the work. I can't change what happened, but I can change. What comes next? Elizabeth felt the weight of the moment. It won't be easy, but we can take it one step at a time, she added. Let's set some boundaries, some goals. If we're going to heal, we need to be honest with each other. Boundaries? Sarah's tone softened slightly, curiosity glimmering through her anger. Like what? I have tended. Like checking in with each other, talking about how we feel. No more pretending, no more avoiding the hard stuff, Elizabeth explained, her heart pounding with hope. Maybe we could do a family check-in every week, Michael suggested. Just a time for us to be honest about how we're feeling. Fine, Sarah said begrudgingly. But I'm not promising anything. That's fair, Elizabeth replied, relief washing over her. We'll take it slow. As they began to clear the table, the tension felt a little lighter. Elizabeth's heart filled with gratitude for these small steps. They weren't fixed yet, but they were moving forward, and that was something to cling to. Later that day, Elizabeth found herself in the garden, pulling weeds from the flower beds. The earth felt cool beneath her fingers, grounding her, reminding her that growth takes time and effort. She didn't want to rush the healing. She wanted to nurture it, just like the flowers. As she worked, her thoughts drifted back to Michael and the kids. She knew the road ahead would be rocky, lined with uncertainty and fear, but there was also hope, hope that, like the flowers, they could grow together again. With the sun setting low, casting a warm glow over everything, Elizabeth took a deep breath. She prayed silently, asking for strength and guidance. She felt a sense of peace wash over her. No matter how fragile things felt, she had faith. Together, they could find their way back to each other. In the days that followed, they leaned into the uncomfortable conversations. Each moment of honesty felt like a brick laid down, building a new foundation of trust. Elizabeth discovered that, through vulnerability, they were becoming stronger, more resilient, and as the flowers continued to bloom, Elizabeth realized they were all learning to bloom too, in their own ways. They were learning to forgive, to heal, and to love again, despite the pain. Each day was a step forward, a testament to their strength, faith, and the unbreakable bonds of family. The following week brought a chill that settled in the air, reminiscent of the tension that hung over Elizabeth's family. Leaves danced in the wind, swirling in chaotic patterns, echoing the whirlwind of emotions within her. She stood in the kitchen, staring at the half-prepared dinner, her mind racing. Despite their newfound commitment to honesty, the weight of silence felt suffocating. "Mom?" Sarah's voice broke through the stillness, cautious yet probing. Elizabeth turned, the flicker of hope igniting in her chest. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart," Elizabeth replied, her heart quickening. "What if we can't fix this?" Sarah's eyes held a mixture of fear and defiance, the vulnerability hidden beneath layers of anger. "What if it just gets worse?" Elizabeth paused, her hands resting on the counter. "I won't pretend it's easy, but I believe we can find a way through. It's like planting a seed. Sometimes it takes time and care to grow." "Yeah, but what if we're just watering a dead plant?" Sarah shot back, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "What if it's all just a waste?" "Then we'll try again," Elizabeth said, her voice steady, firm. "It's okay to doubt. I have doubts too, but we owe it to ourselves to try." As if on cue, the front door creaked open, and Michael stepped in, the weariness of the world etched on his face. "Hey everyone," he called, trying to infuse a sense of normalcy into the air. "Dinner's almost ready," Elizabeth offered, her tone measured. "Great," Michael replied, but the tension in the room was palpable. He could feel it, thick and suffocating, as if the very walls were pressing in. "How was your day, Sarah?" "Fine," she replied curtly, her eyes darting away. The coldness in her voice sliced through the air, leaving a hurt that hung unspoken. "Just fine?" Michael pressed, searching for a connection that felt impossible right now. "Yeah, just fine," she echoed, her irritation flaring. "You wouldn't understand anyway." "Try me," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. "Why? So you can use it against me later?" Sarah shot back, the walls around her heart thickening. "Sarah," Elizabeth interjected, sensing the storm brewing. "No, Mom, he needs to hear this," Sarah continued, her defiance bubbling over. "You messed up. You don't get to act like everything's fine and dandy. We're not a happy family anymore, and you can't just pretend we are." Michael's eyes darkened, but he kept his tone calm. "I'm not pretending. I'm here. I want to make it right." "Make it right?" Sarah scoffed, her anger flaring. "You think it's that simple? You just say sorry and it's all fixed?" "Sarah, please," Elizabeth said, her heart aching for both of them. "Let's try to talk about this without anger." "Anger is the only thing I have right now," Sarah shouted, her words ricocheting off the walls. "Everything feels broken. I don't know how to feel, and it's all because of you." David wandered into the kitchen, sensing the tension. "What's wrong?" he asked, eyes wide with confusion. "Nothing," Sarah replied, her tone softening, but the hurt lingered in the air. "Everything's fine, buddy," Michael added, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Fine?" Sarah echoed, her voice dripping with disbelief. "This isn't fine. It's a mess." "Hey everyone, let's take a breath," Elizabeth urged, stepping in to diffuse the situation. "We're here together, and that counts for something." "Does it?" Sarah challenged, crossing her arms. "I don't know if I can trust him again. How do I know he won't screw up again?" Michael clenched his jaw, the pain of her words piercing his heart. "You don't know. Trust is earned, and I'm willing to work for it. I'll show you." "Show me?" Sarah echoed, disbelief etched in her features. How? With more empty promises? Come on, Sarah, Elizabeth interjected, her heart racing. Let's give him a chance. We all have to be willing to work through this together. Why should I? Sarah's voice was laced with hurt. You're asking me to forgive him for something that shattered our family. I don't want to be part of this charade. None of us want a charade, Michael said, his voice firm. But I'm standing here, ready to fight for my family. I'm asking you to meet me halfway. I don't want to meet you anywhere, Sarah shot back, her voice trembling. I want things to be how they were before all this. Elizabeth stepped closer, her heart aching for her daughter. I know you do, love, but we can't go back. We need to move forward, even if it's hard. Hard? Sarah's voice cracked. It's unbearable. I can't wake up every day feeling like this. None of us can, Michael replied, his voice thick with emotion. But we can't heal if we don't at least try. I'm asking you to give me a chance, to give us a chance. Silence enveloped them, heavy and oppressive, the weight of unspoken fears hanging in the air. Elizabeth glanced at David, who stood wide-eyed, the innocence of childhood stark against the turmoil surrounding him. Can we just eat? David finally said, breaking the tension. I'm hungry. Sure, let's eat, Elizabeth said, grateful for the distraction. They sat down, the atmosphere still fraught, but the act of sharing a meal felt like a small lifeline. As they picked at their food, Elizabeth watched Sarah, her heart aching with the realization that trust was a fragile thing. Each bite was a reminder of the work that lay ahead. Mom? Sarah's voice broke through the silence again, softer this time, tinged with uncertainty. What if we can't ever trust him again? We'll take it one day at a time, Elizabeth replied, her voice steady. And remember, it's okay to feel angry. Anger can lead us to truth, but we have to channel it into something constructive. Like those flowers? Sarah asked, a hint of sarcasm creeping in. Exactly, Elizabeth said, her heart swelling with hope. Just like the flowers, they endure storms, they bend, but they keep growing. Fine, Sarah muttered, glancing at Michael. But I'm not making any promises. I wouldn't expect you to, Michael replied, the pain in his voice evident. I just ask for your patience as I earn back what I lost. The conversation continued, the tension easing slightly as they navigated through their feelings. It wasn't easy, but each word spoken, each emotion laid bare felt like a step forward. As the evening wore on, Elizabeth felt a flicker of hope. They were still fractured, but they were learning to communicate, to express their truths. Healing was a process, and while the road ahead was uncertain, they were taking the first steps together. In the quiet moments that followed dinner, Elizabeth realized they were no longer just surviving, they were beginning to live again. And amidst the storm, she held on to the belief that redemption was possible, that love could still flourish even in broken places. Through faith and resilience, they would find their way back to one another, stronger than before. The days that followed felt like a delicate dance, each family member stepping carefully around the cracks that had formed in their foundation. Elizabeth observed the way the sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow over the table where they now shared meals with tentative laughter. It was a stark contrast to the heavy silence that had once filled the space. Hope flickered, fragile yet persistent, like the first blooms of spring pushing through the remnants of winter. One evening, after dinner, Elizabeth found herself alone in the kitchen, wiping down the counter. The familiar scent of lemon cleaner mingled with the fading aroma of the roast from earlier. She could hear David's laughter from the living room, where he and Sarah were engrossed in a game of cards. The sound was music to her ears, a reminder that even amidst turmoil, joy could exist. "Mom, come on!" Sarah's voice rang out, playful yet insistent. "You can't be the only one not playing." All right, I'm coming," Elizabeth called back, her heart swelling with affection. She dried her hands and joined them, feeling the weight of worry lift, if only for a moment. As they played, Elizabeth marveled at how the laughter flowed more freely now. Sarah, still guarded, allowed herself to smile, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of mischief and joy. David, ever the innocent, cheered loudly, oblivious to the underlying tension that had once threatened to engulf them all. "Okay, I'm about to win," Sarah declared, her voice filled with excitement. "Not if I can help it," David shouted back, his face scrunched in concentration. Elizabeth couldn't help but smile at their banter, the ease of their interactions warming her heart. Who knew a simple game could bring such chaos? She laughed, her voice light. That's just how it goes in this family, Sarah replied, her tone teasing but laced with genuine connection. Right, chaos is our middle name, Elizabeth joked, her heart full. Later that night, after the laughter faded and the game was put away, Elizabeth found herself alone with her thoughts. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the family photo on her nightstand, the one taken before everything fell apart. They were all smiles, arms wrapped around each other, the epitome of happiness. God, I need your strength, she whispered, the vulnerability of her prayer spilling into the quiet room. Guide us through this, help us to heal. Her faith felt like a lifeline, threaded through the cracks in her heart. She closed her eyes, envisioning the warmth of God's embrace, a soothing balm for her weary spirit. The following Sunday, they attended church together. The familiar hymns filled the air, and Elizabeth felt a sense of belonging wash over her. As the congregation sang, she clutched her hands together, her heart open, ready to receive the message of hope. The pastor spoke of redemption and forgiveness, weaving tales of love that transcended hardships. Each word resonated with her, echoing the longing she held in her heart. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, he said, his voice steady. It's choosing to move forward, to allow love to guide us even when it feels impossible. Elizabeth's heart raced. This was the truth she needed to hear. She glanced at Michael, sitting a few pews away, the weight of his mistakes heavy on his shoulders. But in this moment, surrounded by their community, she felt a flicker of possibility ignite within her. After the service, as they walked to the car, Elizabeth felt the warmth of Michael's presence beside her. I'm trying, he said quietly, his voice laced with sincerity. I want to be the man you deserve. She turned to him, searching his eyes for the truth. I know, and I want to believe in you again, but it's going to take time. I'll wait as long as it takes, he replied, his voice firm. I'll show you that I can change. That week, they began to rebuild the lost connections. Michael took the initiative, planning a family outing to the local park. It felt tentative, like stepping onto a tightrope. But Elizabeth agreed, sensing the need for shared experiences. As they strolled along the winding paths, the vibrant colors of autumn enveloping them, Elizabeth watched her children interact. David ran ahead, his laughter echoing through the trees, while Sarah walked beside Michael, her body language still guarded but softer than before. Look at that tree, David called out, his eyes wide with excitement. It's huge! Like a giant, Sarah exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. Elizabeth smiled at the shift in her daughter's tone, the joy creeping back into her spirit. They sat together on a picnic blanket, the sun casting a golden hue over the scene. Elizabeth spread out the food, the simple sandwiches and fruit feeling like a feast in the open air. As they ate, stories flowed easily, laughter bubbling up unexpectedly. Remember when Dad tried to make pancakes and they turned into a disaster? Sarah recalled, her laughter echoing. I'll never live that down, Michael chuckled, the warmth of shared memories allowing a crack in the tension between them. Can we do it again? David asked, his eyes shining with hope. Absolutely, Michael replied, his smile genuine. Next Saturday, pancakes it is. As they packed up, Elizabeth felt a shift within her. Hope wasn't just a distant dream. It was tangible, wrapped in the laughter of her children and the willingness of Michael to fight for their family. That evening, after tucking the children into bed, Elizabeth found herself in the living room, staring at the flickering candles. She closed her eyes, allowing the warmth of the flames to envelop her, grateful for this moment of peace. Thank you, Lord, she whispered, her heart swelling with faith. For the small steps, for the laughter, and the chance to rebuild what was broken. With each passing day, Elizabeth felt hope blossoming within her, a reminder that healing was possible, even in the midst of chaos. They were a work in progress, but love, faith, and resilience would guide them through. And as she drifted off to sleep that night, a soft smile graced her lips, for she knew they were beginning to rise from the ashes, together. The frost of winter was beginning to thaw, but the chill had not yet left Elizabeth's heart. Each morning, she awoke to the sound of the birds singing outside, a stark reminder of the warmth she longed for. The family had been functional since that picnic, but the air remained charged with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. The laughter was back, yet shadows lingered around the edges. One evening, as she prepared dinner, Elizabeth caught a glimpse of Michael in the living room talking to David. The way he knelt beside their son, listening intently, stirred something deep within her. She wanted to believe in his efforts, but uncertainty gnawed at her like a persistent ache. "Mom, can I have a sleepover this weekend?" Sarah's voice broke through her thoughts, bringing her back to the present. The question was innocent enough, yet it felt heavy in the air. "Of course, sweetheart," Elizabeth replied, but her heart tightened. The idea of Sarah having friends over felt like a step toward normalcy, yet it also meant confronting feelings she wasn't sure how to navigate. "Can I invite Lisa?" Sarah asked, her excitement bubbling over. "Sure, that sounds great," Elizabeth managed, forcing a smile. She felt her daughter's happiness was a fragile thing, and she didn't want to break it. As the days passed, Elizabeth found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The upcoming sleepover felt like a turning point, yet the thought of having other parents in their home made her anxious. She wanted to showcase the family they were, not the broken pieces that still lay scattered beneath the surface. On the day of the sleepover, Elizabeth busied herself in the kitchen, preparing snacks while Sarah and her friends laughed in the living room. The sound of their joy filled the house, but it also highlighted the emptiness she felt inside. She could hear snippets of their conversation, the giggles and whispers, and she longed to join them, to be the fun mom she used to be. "Mom, can you come here?" Sarah's voice rang out, pulling Elizabeth from her thoughts. She wiped her hands on a towel and walked into the living room. The sight of Sarah surrounded by friends, young girls with bright smiles and infectious laughter, brought warmth to her heart, but the reality of her situation loomed large in the background. "Look at this, Mom," Sarah exclaimed, holding up a colorful board game. It was a game they had played countless times, a remnant of happier days. "Can we play?" "Of course," Elizabeth said, her heart swelling with love. She settled down on the floor, the laughter of the girls wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. The game began, and for a moment she felt like everything was normal. The girls squealed and cheered, the innocence of their youth creating a bubble of joy. But then the doorbell rang, and with it came a jolt of apprehension. Elizabeth exchanged glances with Michael, who stood in the doorway, the weight of his own uncertainty evident. "Should I get it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, you should," Elizabeth replied, her heart racing. He opened the door, and in walked Lisa's parents, smiling, friendly, but unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Elizabeth forced a smile, welcoming them into the chaos of the living room. "Hi there, it's so nice to see you," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Thanks for having Lisa over," Lisa's mom replied, her eyes flicking to Michael, a hint of curiosity in her expression. "Of course," Elizabeth said, trying to maintain the facade of normalcy. The conversation flowed, but Elizabeth felt like an observer in her own life. As the evening wore on, the laughter of the girls blended with the chatter of the adults. Elizabeth could see the concern in Michael's eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the tension between them. As if reading her thoughts, he reached out, squeezing her hand under the table, a small gesture, yet it felt monumental. When the adults finally left, Elizabeth felt the weight lift slightly. "That went well," she said, trying to convince herself as much as anyone. "Yeah," Michael replied, but she could hear the uncertainty in his voice. That night, as the girls settled into their sleeping bags, Elizabeth lingered in the hallway, the sounds of giggles drifting out like a comforting echo. She felt a surge of gratitude for these moments, but it was quickly followed by a wave of doubt. In the quiet of her bedroom, she found herself once again seeking solace in prayer. "Lord, grant me clarity. Help us to heal, to forgive. I'm trying, but I need your strength." The following week, the tension between her and Michael began to surface again. They had started to communicate more, but the walls built from hurt were still present. One day, as they were folding laundry together, the silence became unbearable. "Do you think we can really fix this?" Michael asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elizabeth paused, the question hanging in the air. "I want to believe we can, But it's hard. I feel like I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop. I understand, he said, his tone filled with genuine remorse. I'm not asking you to forget. I just want the chance to show you I can be better. I want that too, but it's a process, she replied, her heart heavy. As the days turned into weeks, they continued to navigate their new reality. One afternoon, Elizabeth found herself in church again, the familiar hymn wrapping around her like a protective shield. She closed her eyes, letting the words wash over her. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, the pastor's voice echoed in her mind. It's choosing to love despite the hurt. The message struck a chord deep within her. Could she truly embrace that idea? Could she allow herself to love Michael again? After the service, Elizabeth lingered, the congregation bustling around her. A comforting hand rested on her shoulder, and she turned to see Sarah. "Mom, are you okay?" Sarah asked, concern lining her features. "I'm all right, sweetheart. Just thinking." "About Dad?" Sarah ventured, her voice soft. "Yes," Elizabeth admitted, her heart swelling with love for her daughter. "I'm trying to figure things out." "I just want things to be normal again," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. Elizabeth wrapped her arms around her daughter, pulling her close. "Me too. We'll get there, I promise." As they left the church, Elizabeth felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. They were moving forward, step by step. Yet, the journey was just beginning, and the path ahead remained uncertain. With faith in her heart, she clung to the belief that healing was possible, even amidst the chaos. The future was unwritten, but she was ready to embrace it, one day at a time. As the days slipped by, Elizabeth found herself standing at a crossroads, the weight of her choices pressing heavily on her shoulders. Each morning, she rose with a renewed sense of purpose, but the specter of doubt still loomed large. The mornings were quiet, the kind of stillness that amplified her fears. She brewed her coffee, letting the warmth seep into her hands, a small comfort amidst the chaos. One Saturday morning, Elizabeth decided to take a walk in the nearby park. The sun filtered through the trees, casting playful shadows on the path. She needed space to breathe, to think. As she walked, she noticed families enjoying picnics, children flying kites, laughter mingling with the gentle rustle of leaves. It was a scene of normalcy, a stark contrast to the turbulence within her. "Hey, Elizabeth," a familiar voice called out. It was Jennifer, her longtime friend and neighbor. They hadn't spoken much since the news broke, but Elizabeth felt a flicker of relief wash over her. "Hi, Jennifer," she replied, forcing a smile. "How are you?" Jennifer's eyes sparkled with concern. "I'm okay, just out with the kids. I heard about everything. I just wanted you to know I'm here if you need anything." "Thanks, that means a lot," Elizabeth said, her voice barely above a whisper. She hadn't realized how much she needed that acknowledgement, that connection. "Do you want to join us for a bit? The kids are having a blast," Jennifer offered, her warmth undeniable. Elizabeth hesitated. The thought of the laughter felt like a foreign language, but something inside her whispered to take a chance. "Sure, I'd love to." As they settled on the grass, Elizabeth watched the kids chase after a frisbee, their joy contagious. Laughter erupted, filling the air with a lightness she had longed for. Elizabeth found herself smiling, the corners of her mouth lifting as she joined in their playful banter. "Mom, can we go to the swings?" David called, his eyes bright with excitement. "Of course," she replied, her heart swelling as she stood up. The innocence of his joy was a balm to her aching spirit. As they walked to the swings, Elizabeth felt the tension in her chest ease slightly. She realized that in those moments, surrounded by laughter and carefree children, she could breathe again. Perhaps there was hope after all. Later that afternoon, back home, Elizabeth found herself in the kitchen, preparing dinner. As she chopped vegetables, Sarah wandered in her phone in hand, a glimmer of excitement in her eyes. "Mom, can I go to the mall with Lisa and a few friends tomorrow?" she asked, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm. "Of course, sweetheart. Just be sure to be home by dinner," Elizabeth replied, a genuine smile breaking through her earlier worries. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." Sarah beamed before darting out of the kitchen, her energy infectious. Elizabeth couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Her daughter was finding her way in the midst of uncertainty. That evening, after the kitchen was tidy and the children were tucked in, Elizabeth found herself alone with her thoughts. She sat on the couch, the soft glow of the lamp casting a warm light over the room. The silence enveloped her, but it felt different now, less suffocating, more hopeful. Picking up her journal, she flipped through the pages filled with her thoughts and prayers. She paused, her eyes landing on a passage she'd written weeks ago. Asterisk, healing is not linear, it's a journey of faith and perseverance. Asterisk. She closed her eyes, letting the words resonate within her. Elizabeth realized she was beginning to discover herself again. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it no longer defined her. There was a strength within her, a growing resilience that sparked with each small moment of joy. She glanced at the family picture on the mantel, Michael's arm around her shoulder, their smiles genuine and bright. Could they find their way back? Could they rebuild what had been broken? The next day, as Sarah prepared for her outing, Elizabeth decided to take a leap of faith. "You know, I'm going to join you at the mall," she said, surprising even herself. "What? Really?" Sarah's eyes widened, a mix of excitement and disbelief. "Absolutely. I think it'll be fun," Elizabeth replied, her heart racing. As they walked through the mall, Elizabeth felt the joy radiating from her daughter. They spent hours browsing stores, sharing laughter over silly outfits and indulging in ice cream. In those moments, the heaviness of the past began to lift, replaced by a sense of connection and shared happiness. "Mom, this is the best day ever," Sarah exclaimed, her smile lighting up the room. "I'm glad, sweetheart. I needed this too," Elizabeth admitted, her heart swelling with gratitude. When they returned home, Elizabeth found Michael in the living room, a book in his hands. He looked up, surprise evident in his eyes. "How was it?" "It was great. Sarah had a blast," Elizabeth replied, the warmth of the day still enveloping her. "I'm glad to hear that," he said, his tone softening. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything." Elizabeth nodded, her heart fluttering with hope. "Me too. I want to talk. It's time we address this together." They sat down, and the conversation flowed tentative at first but gradually gaining momentum. They shared their fears, their hopes, and the desire to move forward. Elizabeth realized that the walls she had built were beginning to crack. Vulnerability was a necessary step toward healing. "I want to show you I can be better, Elizabeth," Michael said, sincerity lacing his words. "I know it'll take time, but I'm committed to this." "I want that too," she replied, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within her. "But it's going to be a journey. We need to take it one step at a time." As they talked late into the evening, Elizabeth felt the bond they once shared begin to mend. It wouldn't be easy, but they were willing to fight for their family. In the days that followed, Elizabeth found strength in their conversations. They began to reconnect, rediscovering the love that had been buried under layers of pain. They shared moments of laughter over family dinners, took walks together, and even began to pray together again. Elizabeth felt lighter, as if the burden she had carried for so long was slowly being lifted. She realized that healing wasn't a destination, but a continuous journey, one filled with both challenges and victories. As she tucked her children into bed each night, she whispered prayers of gratitude, her heart full of hope. The road ahead would undoubtedly be rocky, but with faith, resilience, and a commitment to love, she was ready to embrace the unknown. The future was still unwritten, but for the first time in a long while, Elizabeth felt she had the strength to write a new chapter. The days turned into weeks, and each sunrise brought new opportunities for Elizabeth. She found herself waking up earlier, the dawn light spilling into her room, illuminating the path ahead. It was a fresh start, an invitation to embrace the life she wanted, not just for herself, but for her children too. One morning, as she poured her cup of coffee, Elizabeth glanced out the kitchen window. The garden, once overgrown, was now flourishing with blooms of color. It mirrored her journey, a testament to resilience and the beauty that could emerge from pain. She smiled at the thought, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "Mom, can we go to the park today?" David's voice cut through her reverie, bright and hopeful. "Absolutely! Just let me finish this," she replied, her heart swelling at his enthusiasm. The park had been a favorite family spot, a place where laughter echoed and memories were made. Today, it felt like a pilgrimage back to joy. As they arrived, the sun bathed the playground in golden light. Elizabeth watched David race toward the swings, his laughter a melody that filled her with warmth. She felt the weight of her worries begin to dissipate, replaced by the simple joy of being present. "Come on, Mom, push me," he called, his eyes sparkling with delight. "All right, hold on tight." She laughed, the sound flowing freely, a balm to her soul. With each push, she felt lighter, more liberated. It was as if she was not only lifting him but also herself, soaring beyond the shadows of despair. Nearby, Sarah was chatting with her friends, the teenage giggles wrapping around Elizabeth like a comforting embrace. There was a time when she feared for Sarah's heart, worried that the turmoil at home would taint her spirit, but seeing her daughter vibrant and full of life filled Elizabeth with pride. They were finding their way, one playful moment at a time. Later that afternoon, after David had exhausted himself on the swings, they gathered on a grassy knoll. Elizabeth pulled out the picnic she had prepared: sandwiches, fruit, and a surprise treat of chocolate chip cookies. The small act of planning brought her joy, a reminder that nurturing was an expression of love. "Wow, Mom, you're the best!" David exclaimed, his eyes wide with excitement as he devoured a cookie. "Don't forget to save some for your sister," Elizabeth said, a playful warning. They shared stories, laughter, and little victories from their week, each word weaving a tighter bond among them. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Elizabeth felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. It was a reminder of the beauty that still existed in her life, the promise of a new dawn after every night. Returning home, Elizabeth found Michael sitting on the couch, a book open in his lap, but his gaze was distant. He looked up as she entered, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "How was your day?" he asked, his voice tentative yet warm. "It was wonderful. We had a picnic at the park," she replied, her heart racing. Would he understand the joy that filled her? "Sounds lovely. I've missed those days," Michael said, his tone softening. Elizabeth nodded, feeling the connection between them begin to strengthen again. "I think we're starting to find our way back, don't you?" Michael smiled, a genuine expression that lit up his face. "I think so. I want us to keep moving forward together." The conversation flowed easily, as if the walls built from pain were crumbling. Elizabeth saw the sincerity in his eyes and felt a warmth wrap around her heart. This was a pivotal moment, a chance for both of them to reclaim their family. In the days that followed, they began to establish a routine of open communication. They set aside time to talk, to share their thoughts and fears. Each conversation was like a stitch in a frayed fabric, slowly mending what had been torn apart. One evening, as they sat on the patio under the stars, Elizabeth felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. "I'm proud of the progress we're making," she said, her voice steady. "It's not easy, but I believe we can do this." Michael reached for her hand, his grip firm. "I want to prove to you that I can be the man you deserve. I'm committed to this family." With each passing day, Elizabeth discovered new strengths within herself. She began attending a local women's group that focused on faith and self-improvement. The community embraced her, offering support and encouragement. They prayed together, shared stories, and celebrated each other's victories, big and small. One Friday evening, Elizabeth shared her journey with the group, her voice steady, emotions flowing freely. "I've learned that healing is a process. It's not just about forgiveness. It's about rediscovering who we are and what we want for our lives." The women nodded, their eyes filled with understanding and compassion. In that moment, Elizabeth felt a sense of belonging, a community that uplifted her spirit. As the weeks turned into months, Elizabeth's heart began to heal. The darkness that once loomed over her life slowly receded, replaced by the light of hope and new beginnings. She found strength not only in herself but in her family. They were growing together, learning to navigate the complexities of love and redemption. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, laughter bounced off the walls. Michael had made a silly joke that sent David into fits of giggles. Elizabeth looked around, her heart swelling with gratitude. This was what she had fought for: a family united, laughter echoing once more. "Mom, can we do this every night?" David asked between giggles. "Every night, and more," she replied, her voice filled with conviction. Later that night, Elizabeth stood in her kitchen. the familiar scent of spices and comfort filling the air. She glanced at the family picture on the mantel. It was no longer a reminder of what had been lost, but a symbol of resilience and hope. Elizabeth picked up her journal, reflecting on her journey. The pages were filled with prayers, thoughts, and affirmations of strength. She felt lighter, empowered by the victories she had achieved, both small and monumental. With renewed determination, she penned a message for herself. Asterisk. This is your story, Elizabeth. You are strong. You are worthy. You will thrive. Asterisk. As she closed the journal, she looked out the window, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. The future was bright, and she was ready to embrace it with open arms. Together, they would continue to write their story, one filled with love, healing, and unwavering faith. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the kitchen. Elizabeth stood by the sink, washing the remnants of dinner away. Each splash of water felt like a cleansing ritual, washing away the remnants of doubt that had once clung to her. She had learned to embrace the chaos, to find beauty within the struggle. "Mom, can I talk to you?" Sarah's voice broke through Elizabeth's thoughts, her tone serious. The weight of the world seemed to rest on the shoulders of her 15-year-old daughter. Elizabeth turned, wiping her hands on a dish towel, ready to listen. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" She leaned against the counter, her heart open and ready for whatever was coming. "I know things have been hard since. Well, I just want you to know that I see you trying. I really do." Sarah's gaze held a mix of vulnerability and strength. Elizabeth felt a rush of gratitude swell within her. "Thank you, love. It means a lot to me. I'm trying to be strong for you and David, but it's not always easy." Elizabeth's voice softened, the truth of her struggles spilling out like water from a well. "I get it, but I don't want you to feel like you have to carry everything alone. We're a team, right?" Sarah's words were a lifeline, a reminder of the bond they shared. "Absolutely. We're in this together." Elizabeth smiled, and in that moment, the walls between mother and daughter felt a little less daunting. Later, as night settled in, Elizabeth found herself alone in her room. She lit a candle, the flickering flame casting a warm glow that felt like a hug. Sitting on her bed, she opened her journal once more. The pages were filled with her journey, a testament to resilience, to faith. "Dear God," she began, her pen moving steadily. "Thank you for guiding me through this storm. I trust that you have a plan for us. Help me to be the mother my children need. Help me to find peace amidst the chaos." Each word was a prayer, a whisper of hope into the universe. The following morning she awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the light. Elizabeth felt it, an energy pulsating within her, a call to action. She made a decision to take charge of her life, to cultivate joy even when shadows loomed. She joined a local church group, one that focused on women's empowerment and faith-based growth. Surrounded by women who shared their struggles and triumphs, Elizabeth felt a sense of belonging. They were warriors, each with their stories of heartache, resilience, and redemption. "Together, we rise," the group leader often reminded them, her voice powerful and full of conviction. The mantra resonated within Elizabeth, echoing the strength she had found in her own family. One evening, as they gathered for their weekly meeting, Elizabeth shared her journey. "I've learned that healing isn't linear. It's messy and unpredictable, but it's also beautiful. I'm finding strength in vulnerability." Nods of understanding filled the room, the air thick with empathy. Elizabeth felt a sense of release, as if the burdens she carried were being lifted by the collective spirit of the women surrounding her. "Can we pray together?" one woman suggested, her voice gentle yet firm. They formed a circle, hands clasped tightly. The prayers rose up, a symphony of faith and hope. Elizabeth closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of community envelop her like a comforting blanket. After the meeting, Elizabeth lingered, chatting with a few women over tea. They exchanged stories, laughter mingling with tears. In those moments, she realized she wasn't alone. They were all navigating their own storms, yet finding light together. Weeks rolled into months, and Elizabeth felt herself transforming. The cracks in her heart were slowly mending, filled with faith and love. She began to embrace her role as a mother with renewed vigor, cherishing each moment spent with David and Sarah. One Saturday morning, she decided to take them on a spontaneous adventure. "How about we go to the beach?" she suggested, her voice brimming with excitement. "Really? The beach?" David's eyes sparkled with joy. "Absolutely! Grab your swimsuits!" The car ride was filled with laughter, the sound of music filling the air as they sang along. Elizabeth felt alive, the ocean breeze dancing through her hair, a reminder of freedom and joy. Upon arriving, they raced toward the waves, the sand warm beneath their feet. Elizabeth watched as David splashed in the water, his laughter ringing like bells. Sarah lounged under an umbrella, her phone in hand, but Elizabeth could see the corners of her mouth turn up, a hint of a smile breaking through the teenage facade. "Come on, Sarah, join us," Elizabeth called, splashing water in her direction. All right, Sarah laughed, finally giving in. They played together, the ocean waves crashing against the shore, a symphony of laughter and love. That evening, as they sat on the beach watching the sunset, Elizabeth felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The sky was ablaze with colors, a canvas painted with hope. "Mom, this was the best day ever," David exclaimed, leaning against her. "It really was," Elizabeth said, her heart full. "We should do this more often." As they drove home, the stars began to twinkle in the night sky. Elizabeth reflected on the journey she had taken, the mountains she had climbed. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but she felt equipped to face them, buoyed by faith and the love of her family. "Together, we can conquer anything," she whispered, a prayer of gratitude escaping her lips as she glanced at her children. For the first time in a long while, the future felt bright, and she was ready to embrace it with open arms. The following week brought a chill to the air, a stark reminder of the changing seasons. Elizabeth woke up earlier than usual, her mind racing with thoughts. She brewed a pot of coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen, but it did little to calm her nerves. Today was the day she would confront Michael. She stood by the window, watching the leaves flutter down like whispers of change. The thought of facing him made her heart race. How could she find the words to convey her hurt without losing herself in the chaos? The children were still asleep, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing within her. After a deep breath, she sent Michael a message. "Can we talk today?" The simple words carried the weight of 1,000 emotions. The response came swiftly. "Of course, I'll be home by noon." As the clock ticked closer to the hour, Elizabeth felt her stomach twist in knots. She planned to lay bare her feelings, to express the pain of his betrayal, but also to seek closure. She wanted to understand how they had come to this point and what could be salvaged, if anything. At 11:30, she set the table for an early lunch, hoping it would soften the moment. The plates felt heavier than usual, as if they carried the burden of their broken trust. When Michael walked through the door, his face was a mask of regret, shadowed by uncertainty. "Hi," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hi," she replied, her tone steady, though her heart was a whirlwind. They sat across from each other, the tension palpable. "Thank you for agreeing to talk." He reached for her hand, but she pulled back, needing space, needing clarity. "Michael, I don't even know where to begin," Elizabeth said, her voice trembling slightly. "You shattered our family. I thought we were stronger than this." "I know. I'm so sorry," he murmured. "I made a terrible mistake. I let my own insecurities push me away from you." His words hung in the air, heavy with remorse. Elizabeth's heart was torn between a desire for reconciliation and the need to protect her children. "But how do we rebuild from this?" she pressed, searching his eyes for honesty. "Together. I want to fight for us, for our family," he replied, desperation creeping into his voice. "You say that now, but can I trust you?" The question hung between them like a pendulum, swinging back and forth. "I will do anything to earn your trust back," he declared, his eyes earnest. "I promise to go to counseling, to work on myself. I want to understand why I did this." Elizabeth felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by doubt. "What if this is just talk? What if you don't follow through?" "I know I have to prove myself," he said, leaning forward. "I'll do whatever it takes. I've been lost, but I want to find my way back to you." The sincerity in his voice softened her resolve, but it was still a fragile thread. "It's not just about me, Michael. It's about Sarah and David. I can't let them see us like this. They deserve better." "I understand that," he said, his expression solemn. "I want to make it right for them too. They're my priority." As they spoke, Elizabeth felt her defenses begin to crack. The love she had for him hadn't vanished. It was buried beneath layers of hurt. "I need time," she finally said, her voice steady. "I can't promise anything right now. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, ready to do the work," he replied, his voice tinged with hope. With that, Elizabeth felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had spoken openly, and while the path ahead was uncertain, it was a start. She could see a glimmer of possibility, a chance for healing. Later that evening, as she tucked David into bed, she noticed the weight of the day still lingering. "Good night, Mum," he said, his eyes heavy with sleep. "Good night, love," she whispered, kissing his forehead. She turned to leave, but his small voice stopped her. "Are you and Dad okay?" Elizabeth hesitated, searching for the right words. "We're working on it, sweetheart. Just know that we love you very much." "Okay," he murmured, and she could see the trust in his eyes, a reminder of why she was fighting. That night, Elizabeth lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The shadows danced across the walls, a reflection of her own fears and hopes. She turned to her journal, pouring out her heart onto the pages, each word a step toward healing. As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth and Michael began to establish a new rhythm. They attended counseling together, slowly peeling back the layers of their relationship, exposing the rawness beneath. It was painful, yet cathartic. One evening, as they sat across from each other in the therapist's office, Elizabeth felt a shift within her. "I've realized that I need to forgive you, not just for me, but for us," she said, her voice steady. Michael's eyes widened, a mixture of relief and gratitude flooding his features. "Thank you, Elizabeth. I will do everything I can to prove I'm worthy of that forgiveness." The journey was not easy, but with each passing day, they learned to communicate better, to listen and to heal. Elizabeth found herself leaning into her faith more than ever, finding solace in prayer and community. One Sunday after church, as the congregation sang songs of hope and redemption, Elizabeth felt a warmth envelop her. She closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. "Together we rise," she whispered, the words resonating deep within her soul. It became their family mantra. Sarah began to join them in prayer, her teenage angst softening as she witnessed her parents' efforts. David, too, felt the change, his laughter returning to fill the spaces once occupied by tension. Then, one day, as Elizabeth sat in her living room, a familiar face appeared at the door. It was Lisa, her old friend from the church group. "I just wanted to check in on you," she said, her eyes bright with concern. "Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate it," Elizabeth replied, inviting her in. They sat on the couch, and Elizabeth shared the ups and downs of her journey. "I'm proud of you," Lisa said, a warm smile spreading across her face. "You're showing incredible strength. I'm just trying to find my way," Elizabeth admitted. "It's not easy, but I feel like I'm getting there." As they talked, Elizabeth realized how much she had grown, not just as a mother, but as a woman. She was no longer defined by Michael's betrayal. She was rising above it, stronger than before. But just as she began to feel a sense of normalcy, a letter arrived, one that would turn their world upside down again. It was from Michael's estranged sister, Claire, whom they hadn't heard from in years. "Can we talk?" it read. "I need to explain everything." Elizabeth's heart raced. Could this be the final piece of the puzzle, or was it another twist in their already complicated story? She glanced at Michael, who had just walked in, and she knew they would have to face this together, whatever it might bring. With a deep breath, she opened the letter again, the ink swirling like the emotions within her. "Together, we can conquer anything," she whispered, knowing that whatever lay ahead, they would face it as a family. The letter lay on the table, its presence heavy and foreboding. Elizabeth could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her chest. Michael, standing beside her, shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his expression a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Do you want me to read it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "No, I need to do this alone," she replied, her heart pounding in her ears. She needed to face this on her own terms. With a deep breath, she began to read, the words blurring together as her mind raced with possibilities. "Dear Elizabeth," it started, the ink smudged in places as if written in haste. "I know this may come as a shock to you, but I've had a lot of time to think since we last spoke. There are things you need to know about Michael, things that may help you understand why he acted the way he did. Each line felt like a tightening noose, squeezing her resolve. She paused, searching Michael's face for any sign of guilt or shame. But his eyes were steady, urging her to continue. "I've kept my distance for years, but I can't remain silent any longer. I hope you'll hear me out, for the sake of your family." Elizabeth's throat tightened. Would this letter bring clarity or chaos? "Claire's always been a bit dramatic," Michael said, trying to inject a note of levity, but Elizabeth could see the flicker of fear in his eyes. "Dramatic or not, she's your sister," Elizabeth replied, her voice firm. "And right now, I need to know what's going on." "Then let's call her," he suggested, but Elizabeth shook her head. "I need time to process this. I'll reach out when I'm ready." Days passed, and the letter loomed large in her thoughts. Elizabeth found solace in her routine, her faith anchoring her through the uncertainty. She picked up her journal, pouring her heart onto the pages, each word a step toward understanding. One evening, as she flipped through her entries, she stumbled across a passage about forgiveness. "It's a journey, not a destination," she had written. The words echoed in her mind. Could she forgive Michael's past and embrace the truth of their present? The next Sunday at church, as the congregation sang hymns of hope, Elizabeth felt a flicker of clarity. She closed her eyes, letting the music wrap around her like a warm embrace. "Lord, guide me," she whispered, asking for strength to face whatever lay ahead. After the service, she spotted Sarah chatting with her friends, laughter spilling from their corner of the hall. Elizabeth approached, her heart swelling with pride. "Hey love, how's it going?" "Good. Can we go to the park later?" Sarah replied, her eyes shining with youthful excitement. "Of course, just let me finish up here." As Elizabeth turned to leave, she caught sight of Michael across the room, deep in conversation with a member of the congregation. He glanced her way, a silent question in his eyes. She smiled softly, reassuring him that she was okay, even if her heart felt heavy. That evening, the family gathered in the living room. The atmosphere was lighter than it had been in weeks. David was sprawled out on the floor, surrounded by his toys, while Sarah scrolled through her phone, giggling at something. "Do you want to watch a movie?" Michael suggested, his voice brightening the mood. "Sure, can we have popcorn?" David chimed in, his excitement infectious. As they settled in, Elizabeth felt the warmth of family surrounding her. They chose a light-hearted film, laughter filling the room as they shared popcorn. For a moment, it felt almost normal, almost whole. But later that night, as she lay in bed beside Michael, the weight of Claire's letter returned. "Are you okay?" he asked, sensing her turmoil. "I'm just thinking about Claire. I need to talk to her," Elizabeth confessed. Michael sighed, the tension returning. "Do you think it will help?" "I don't know, but I need to face this. It might explain things," she replied, her voice steady. "Just promise me you'll be careful," he urged, his concern evident. "Of course," she whispered, feeling a surge of determination. The next morning, armed with courage, she dialed Claire's number. The phone rang, each tone echoing louder in her heart. "Hello?" Claire's voice sounded cautious. "Claire, it's Elizabeth. I got your letter." There was a pause, a moment suspended in time. "I'm glad you called," Claire finally replied, her tone softening. "I have so much to say." Elizabeth took a deep breath, ready to dive into the depths of the unknown. "I need to know the truth." As Claire spoke, Elizabeth listened intently, her heart racing with every revelation. The layers of Michael's past unfolded, each detail a piece of the puzzle she had been trying to fit together. "Michael struggled with our family dynamics," Claire explained, her voice tinged with regret. "He felt overshadowed, and when he found himself lost, he made a choice that hurt everyone." The pieces began to fall into place. Elizabeth could see the boy who had grown into the man beside her, carrying wounds he had never shared. "I want to help you both heal," Claire continued. "I know I've been absent, but I care about him. I care about you." Elizabeth's heart softened. "Thank you for being honest. It means a lot." When they hung up, Elizabeth felt a new sense of clarity. Michael's betrayal was rooted in more than just a moment of weakness. It was a cry for help he hadn't known how to express. As she turned to Michael that night, his eyes were filled with hope and uncertainty. "What did she say?" "Everything. And it's not just about you. It's about understanding, about finding a way to heal together," she replied, her voice steady. Michael's shoulders relaxed, a glimmer of relief shining in his eyes. "I want that, Elizabeth. I want us to be a family again." "Together we rise," she reminded him, the mantra echoing in her heart. With renewed determination, they embraced the path to healing, knowing that while the road ahead would be challenging, they had each other. Family bonds, once frayed, began to mend, and in the midst of the storm they found strength in vulnerability, hope in honesty, and love in the journey of forgiveness. The kitchen was alive again, the aroma of freshly baked bread wafting through the air, mingling with the laughter of the children. Elizabeth stood at the counter, kneading dough, her heart lighter than it had been in months. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating the space with warmth and hope. Michael was outside, playing catch with David, their laughter ringing like music. Sarah had taken to her room, but Elizabeth knew she was just a text away, engrossed in her world of friends and dreams. As she worked, Elizabeth reflected on the journey they had taken. The conversations with Claire had opened her eyes to the complexities of Michael's past, the struggles that had led him to his moment of weakness. Forgiveness wasn't a single act, it was a continuous choice, a daily commitment to understanding and healing. She felt stronger now, not just for herself but for her family. Michael stepped inside, a flush of excitement on his cheeks. "David just hit a home run," he exclaimed, a grin spreading across his face. "I think we have a little athlete in the making." Elizabeth couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm. "That's wonderful. I'm sure he'll want to tell Sarah all about it when she comes down." As if on cue, Sarah appeared, her hair a wild mess of curls. "What's happening?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "David just scored big," Michael said, ruffling his son's hair. Then he turned to Elizabeth, his expression softening. "You've been amazing through all of this. I appreciate you." Elizabeth felt the warmth spread through her. "We're in this together, remember? It's not just about the past, but about how we move forward." That evening, after dinner, they gathered in the living room, the television flickering softly in the background. David sprawled on the floor, recounting his triumphant hit, while Sarah interjected with playful jabs about her brother's legendary skills. Elizabeth watched them, her heart swelling with love. They were healing, piece by piece. "Let's make this a family tradition," Michael suggested, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Every week, we'll have a family night, games, movies, whatever you want. Can we have ice cream?" David chimed in, his eyes wide with excitement. "Absolutely," Elizabeth affirmed, her heart racing at the thought of these small moments becoming the fabric of their renewed family life. As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth found solace in their routines. Sunday mornings became sacred, where they attended church together, hand in hand, singing hymns that resonated with their journey. Each sermon was a reminder of the power of redemption, of faith, and of love's resilience. One afternoon, while tidying up, Elizabeth stumbled upon Claire's letter again. She picked it up, reading the words that had once felt so heavy. Now they held a different meaning, an invitation to understanding, a bridge to healing. With a determined heart, she decided it was time to reach out again. "Michael, I think we should invite Claire over," she said one evening, her voice steady. He looked up, surprise etched across his face. "Are you sure? I mean, it's been a lot. I know, but it's part of moving forward. I want our family to be whole, even if it's not how we envisioned it," Elizabeth replied, her conviction clear. Michael nodded, the tension easing in his shoulders. "If you think it'll help, I'm with you." A few days later, Claire arrived, her nervous energy palpable as she stepped through the door. Elizabeth greeted her with a warm smile, inviting her into their home. They sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken words. "I'm grateful you reached out," Claire said, her voice shaky. "I know I haven't been around, but I've thought of you both often." "Thank you for coming," Elizabeth replied, her heart racing. "We want to understand, and we want to heal as a family." As they spoke, Elizabeth found herself embracing the uncomfortable truths. Claire shared her perspective on Michael's childhood, the struggles that had echoed through their lives. Each revelation felt like a stitch in the fabric of their family, weaving a tapestry of understanding. After hours of heartfelt conversation, they reached a profound moment of connection. Elizabeth felt the weight of her anger and hurt begin to lift. They were not enemies. They were all on the same path toward healing. "Can we start fresh?" Claire asked, her eyes hopeful. Absolutely, Elizabeth replied, her voice firm. We're in this together now. When Claire left that evening, the air felt lighter. Michael gathered Elizabeth in his arms, holding her close. You were incredible, he whispered. I felt the weight lift, didn't you? She murmured, her heart pounding with the realization of their new beginning. As they lay in bed that night, Elizabeth felt a sense of peace wash over her. They had faced the storm together. The road ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but they would navigate it as a family, stronger than before. Together, we rise, she whispered, her voice filled with conviction. In the days that followed, they embraced their renewed sense of unity. Family game nights became cherished events, filled with laughter and the occasional friendly rivalry. They took walks together, sharing their dreams and fears, their bond deepening with each passing moment. Elizabeth had learned that healing was a journey, one that required patience and persistence. Forgiveness was a gift she gave not just to Michael but to herself. They weren't perfect, but they were committed, and that made all the difference. One Sunday evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over their home, Elizabeth gathered the family in the living room. I want us to share what we're grateful for, she suggested, her heart swelling with love. David went first, his eyes bright. I'm grateful for ice cream, he declared, making everyone laugh. Sarah chimed in. I'm grateful for family movie nights. Michael looked at Elizabeth, his gaze warm. I'm grateful for second chances, and for this family. When it was Elizabeth's turn, she took a deep breath. I'm grateful for love, for healing, and for each of you. Together, we've faced the storm and come out stronger. Let's continue to grow, to forgive, and to love. As they held hands in a circle, Elizabeth felt the rush of hope. They were not just surviving, they were thriving. In the heart of their home, amidst laughter and love, they had found redemption. The journey ahead was theirs to shape, and they would do it together, with faith guiding their way.